basically, trying to establish a framework for how um, people should look at in terms of their wealth management, in terms of, in the framework. It's just like a framework, basically what it is. Now, even before I go further to that, I just showed you a slide there. The Puritans among us say that whatever happens in life is up to Allah. And so therefore we go with what the plan of Allah is. There's absolutely no question about that. We all do that. Uh, Believing in Allah is supreme. There's no question about that. But we also need to tie our camel. And this presentation is about tying our camel. Of course, we all pray. The promised Messiah ﷺ has taught us that prayer is the most potent weapon against all evil. His Khulafa have said the same. Look at Hazur Khalifa Waqt's sermon, be it a Friday sermon or speech anywhere. And on every occasion, he talks about prayers. So yes, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what Allah's plans are. We agree with that. But we also pray, and then we also need to tie our camel. And this presentation is about tying your camel. In Urdu, we call it hikmat amali, and we do to do that. And in the next slide, it is the camel over there. A Sahabi comes to the Holy Prophet ﷺ and says, O Messenger of Allah, should I tie my camel and trust in Allah, or should I untie her and trust in Allah? And the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, tie her and trust in Allah. So we are trying that camel, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, in terms of wealth management, and I use the word wealth management because I'm looking at the financial side of things of every one of us, all of us individuals and families. When we look in life, we all have certain obligations to meet in the future. In certain cases, we have some clarity, but in many cases, we don't have the clarity. But we still need to be prepared for all those eventualities, somehow, somewhere, some other. We need to have those objectives. And those objectives that we have are that we need to set those objectives with certain degree of clarity. And what are those objectives can be? For example, if you are married, you have children, eventually your children are going to go to school. You'll have to pay for some of the schooling. Maybe if they go into private school, a lot more money would be needed. When they would go to college or university, even if they got a student loan, you'll still have to help them out in terms of the living expensive, lodging and boarding. When they get married, you'll end up helping them out in that. And when they get their first property, you may have to help pitch in and help that. And finally, you'll have your retirement. So these are the kind of goals that are there. They're all in front of us, but we are never prepared for these. And this presentation is about trying to show you that there is this framework which will lead you to basically prepare for those eventualities in a financial manner. You set a timeline and you fine-tune it as you go along. But before you start on the timeline, you need to see where you stand today. What is your balance sheet? What do you own and what do you owe? Is your net worth positive or negative? A positive net worth means that what you own is more than what you owe. That's a good position to be in, a positive net worth. Similarly, you look at cash flow statement. You see what are your current earnings? What are you getting in? And what are your expenses? Your earnings should be more than your expenses on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. That is positive cash flow. But all of this comes in with certain risks involved. There's no such thing in life which is riskless. So the risk of shortfall is a key risk, and I'll explain, and you'll see these objectives and these risks as we go along in the next half an hour. These risks are, the risk of shortfall is that getting to a point to meet that financial obligation at a certain level, you don't have enough money to meet that obligation. And that's a risk of shortfall. That's what we call risk of shortfall. And that's a key risk. It's very important. Volatility of returns, that means uncertainty in the short term. For example, you invested in the stock market. The stock market goes up and stock market goes down. And in the short term, you can have unrealized losses or unrealized gains. So this is all basically volatility of returns. The question is going to be, how much of this volatility can you stomach? How much of this volatility can you take, right? How much is risk you can take? There's liquidity risk. You may be invested in one of the best assets in the world, but you can't sell it right now if you need the money right now. You may have a plot of land in Greenland, and Greenland is full of rare earth minerals. So you may be very rich. That plot of land would be highly valued, especially nowadays, as everyone is focusing on Greenland. But the point is that you're not going to be able to get cash out of it right away. You have to explore, you have to dig in, and you have to take those minerals out and make them worthy of selling in the market. That will give you the cash, but that takes time. And that's going to take investment. So investing in illiquid assets could be a risk in the short term, but maybe good in the long term, right? So you need to construct your risk profile. Are you a low risk taker or a medium risk taker or a high risk taker or in between? And I'll clarify all of that in a minute, right? So let me go first and construct my balance sheet and my cash flow statement, right? Right now, things are looking all over the place for you. So don't worry, go with the flow. It will all come together at the end. This is my balance sheet. So my balance sheet is essentially, it shows me that my assets, what I own, and my liabilities, what I owe. I owe cash, maybe I have a current account, maybe I have a savings account, I may have a money market account, I may have a fund and share account or a pension, a SIP, an ISA. I have property, my principal residence, maybe an investment property, a flat or a house that gives me a monthly income in terms of rent, maybe other assets like gold or jewelry. This is what I own. But then I have liabilities. And my liabilities are what? It's the personal loans that I owe, maybe, perhaps credit card balances, maybe some of the taxes that I've not paid, a car loan, mortgage on my principal residence, mortgage on my rental property. I may have some other loans, maybe student loans, maybe business loans that I've guaranteed. So these are my liabilities. So my assets minus my liabilities. Assets, what I own, liabilities, what I owe, gives me my net worth. Now, everyone among you, or most of the among you, have a mortgage. And when you got your mortgage, when you signed up for your mortgage, when you applied for your mortgage, these were the questions you were asked exactly. So this is nothing new to anyone. These are questions that were asked. What do you own? What mortgages do you have? What are your incomings? What are your outgoings? And that's my cash flow statement. What is my income? What is my expenses? My income is my salary, interest on my savings accounts, investment income, rental income. This is what I'm getting. But my expenses could be my rent or mortgage that's going out, payments for the vehicles that I have. I've bought a car where I'm paying payments on a monthly basis, payments on white goods. A lot of people buy washing machines and dishwasher and refrigerators or anything else on installment basis through Klarna or pay later, and those kind of companies. You can have your school fees for your children, insurance premiums, direct debit on personal loans. That's the first set. The second set is your daily expenses, your utility bills, your groceries, your transportation, your personal effects, and then, of course, holidays and entertainment. But why I have put all of these, I will explain to you. You will get more out of this later on. But the thing I want to say right now is very important. If you look at your salary, your incomings, they're pretty much fixed. Your salary is fixed on a monthly basis. Your investment income will be more or less fixed. Your rental income is going to be fixed. And of course, your pension is fixed. And your expenses, the first set that you have, your mortgages, payment on your vehicle, school fees, and all of that kind of stuff, whatever you have, that is pretty much fixed. You have a better flexibility on the second one, which is utility bills and groceries, stuff like that, and more flexibility on the last group, gifts, holiday entertainment. I'm going to come back to this a bit later on. So remember that. Yeah. Let me move on now to it. So how do I use this? How do I look at this in terms of a long-term financial planning goal for myself, right? How do I look at that? So let me go to the next slide. There I am. Consider yourself that you are flying an aircraft. And this is the financial aircraft you're flying to meet your obligations through the rest of your life. You have your balance sheet, you have your current cash flow statement, which tells you where you stand today. What do you have? What do you own? What do you owe? What are your incomings? What are your outgoings? You have this in front of you. You know this. You're flying this aircraft. You have your family with you, perhaps your parents also with you. And you are going to be delivering at each point that you have a bag of money, which is your obligation to pay at that time. Your first bag of money is supporting your children through college or university. Your second obligation that you are going to meet them is that once you graduate and get their jobs and stuff like that, you'll have to help them out in terms of their wedding. Then the third is you have to help them out on their buying the first property. And finally, what you have is, and if you can see that, you have your retirement, and you want to have the twilight years of life being spent in a decent way, enjoying your grandchildren, going around, and having it's called a life enrichment. That's what it is. So the risk of shortfall, if you remember, I talked about, is that risk which says that you are going to be landing on your first slot here, not having the amount of money that you needed to meet your obligations. That is a risk of shortfall. And that's a key risk. And the risk of shortfall will be created by these arrows hitting the nose of the aircraft, which we call as the headwinds. These headwinds are headwinds which are, for example, a sudden drop in the price of stocks that you invested in, or all of a sudden a property where you invested in a property, that whole area has gone down for whatever reason, be it crime or something else, that property values have dropped. That's a headwind. There could be other headwinds in there. Then you have the side winds, what you call as crosswinds. These are short-term fluctuations in the stock market. Short-term fluctuations may be perhaps in your job situation, whatever it is. Your plane, your aircraft goes off course. You have to try to bring that on course again to ensure that you don't have that shortfall risk. And then, of course, you have the tailwinds. And the tailwinds could be that you've invested in a stock that goes up 10% within a day. You saw what happened to Meta last week. Meta went up in 10% in one trading day, right? This is a tailwind. This tailwind means what? If you have good tailwinds, that tailwind is going to get you to this first stop where you have more money than you needed to meet your obligations. So you have some savings, and that's a good position to be in, so that when you go in to meet your obligations, you still have some surplus funds, right? Opposed to a shortfall when you don't have enough funds to meet that obligation, right? Now, let me go into and show you. So what does this mean in terms of investment management, in terms of constructing a portfolio, right? Constructing a portfolio has three areas. You got capital preservation, capital protection, with a stable source of income. This is something you don't want to move. You don't want to play around with that. Then you have wealth enhancement, where you try to grow your capital with low or moderate level of risk. You don't take too much risk, because remember, look at this pyramid. As you go up the pyramid, your returns rise, but at the same time, simultaneously, your risk rises as well. So risk and return go hand in hand. So if you are trying to get more return, you'll end up taking more risk. So you put a certain amount of money then, if you can, into wealth generation, which is that you're building your future with moderate to higher levels of risk, right? So you got 3 different stages. Of course, we can have 4 and 5 different stages as well. But in a general sense, this is what these are the different stages of building your financial, to moving towards your financial freedom. Right? Now, let me go into an example. Let me start with the medium risk taker. So we can have a low risk taker, a medium risk taker, and higher risk taker, right? So let me talk about medium risk taker. A medium risk taker, the portfolio focus for this medium risk taker is capital preservation, wealth enhancement, and wealth generation with moderate volatility returns. This is what I just talked about, right? Now, here is my example, right? So consider I'm a 40-year-old man. I have a wife. I have 2 children, a son which is 14 years old, a daughter that's 12 years old, right? I have my balance sheet. I have my income statement. I know where I stand today in terms of what I own, what I owe, what my comings are, what my outgoings are, right? But I also know that in 4 years' time, my son is going to go to university. He may get a student loan, but I still have to help him out on his boarding and lodging. I'll need some money then, maybe 10 to 12,000 a month. Now, in all these examples, I'm not adding inflation and all those kind of things right now, right? I'm just keeping it very simple, very, very simple, just to drive home the point. 2 years later, my daughter is 12 years old now. She'll be going to university, and I'll need a pot of money every year then also to help her out with her boarding and lodging if she gets a student loan as well. A few years later, by 2035, my son gets married, and I have to help him out on his marriage. A couple of years later, my daughter gets married. I'll have to help out. And then I have to help him out on the property purchase, stuff like that. Now, all of these pots of money that I need, I have to build towards these pots of money, right? And in order for me to build these pots of money, I have to make sure that when the time comes for me to meet these obligations, to deliver this money, I don't have a shortfall. I have enough, maybe more. So I need to hone in all my resources to meet these obligations. And then don't forget that when all of these obligations are met, it's going to be about 30, 40 years, I'm going to retire. And then I have to have a decent life in my retirement, with me and my wife's retirement, right? I need to have a certain amount of money. Of course, I'll be getting my pension, my workplace pension, and my state pension. Of course, I'll have some investments that will be making me, giving me some investment returns. I'll have maybe a rental property or so. I'll get some rent also. So all of these incomings I'll have, and my expenses are going to be limited, and I'm going to go out and do the things in life I want to do, right? But before I get to that, these are my obligations I need to meet. So in order to meet my obligations then, this is going to be my sort of asset allocation. I'll put 50% or so in capital preservation. I'll put 20 to 30% in wealth enhancement. Maybe I dip my toe in the water and maybe take a bit of risk at low and moderate level. And wealth enhancement is where I need to put about 20, 30%. And then, of course, wealth generation, where I take a little bit more risk and I put 20, 25% to top up my returns, right? Now, again, remember that this is what I'm showing you as a model. I'm not saying this is how you invest. In order for you to invest, you need to sit down with your certified financial planner. You need to have your balance sheet. You need to have your income statement, cash flow statement. You need to do that exercise. And then you need to have your timeline to make sure that whatever degree of clarity that you have, put in some numbers that this is year, at this time, I will need this money to meet this obligation. And then I'll need this amount of money to meet this obligation, and then this obligation, right? Armed with this kind of information, when you sit down with a certified financial planner, they can help you out to allocate your assets, allocate your money in a way that will help you meet your obligations. Because at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, that we meet our obligations to, financial obligations to wherever we have to, with our family, with our parents, and so on, right? So let me see that if I do this as a medium risk taker, what kind of asset allocation would I have? And again, this is an example. So 50% of my resources I'm putting in capital preservation, capital protection manner, where I just need liquidity. I can have my property, I can have my cash and savings accounts, my emergency fund, my SIP, my ISA, and then I can invest in cash, Islamic cash equivalents, Muraba, Islamic money market funds, and so on and so forth. I could do that. Then I dip my toe in the water a little bit, take a little bit of risk. I go into halal EFTs, halal equity funds, and so on and so forth that are available out in the market. And I'm going to be putting 25% in there. And then I take a little bit more risk to top up my returns, and I to put 20% in there, which could be Sukuk funds and multi-asset halal funds, halal small cap, mid cap stocks, a little bit more tech sectors. I'm taking a little bit more risk. And finally, if I want to take a little bit more risk, I put maybe a very tiny amount, maybe 5% of my resources into halal emerging market equities and halal private equity funds and stuff like that. But at each level, you see, at the bottom level, I have my capital preservation. I don't want to play around with that. Then I have my wealth enhancement. I take a low to moderate level of risk to enhance my returns. And then my wealth generation is the top two one, where I want to take a little bit more risk to top up my returns in order to ensure that I get to the point where I need to meet my obligations, right? This is my Islamic investment portfolio. If I go with the conventional investment portfolio, this is how my portfolio would look like. Yeah, very similar, but obviously with it doesn't matter whether these are halal or not. They're conventional investment vehicles that I would be investing in, right? Now let me move forward, and in the interest of time, I'll be a bit quick there. So let's say that was a medium risk taker. Now I'm a low risk taker, right? And as a low risk taker, my focus, my portfolio focus is primarily on capital preservation and a bit of wealth enhancement with minimum volatility of returns. I don't want any volatility of returns, right? So what is it? I'm an old man. I'm 60 years old. I'm about to retire in a couple of years' time, right? I've met all my obligations. My kids are all married, have their own properties, living away, everything else. So what do I have to look forward? I have to look forward to my retirement. I have to look forward to life enrichment, which is I want to enjoy my grandchildren. I want to go out with my wife and do the things that we always wanted to do and never got a chance to do, right? I want to take that cruise from Newport Beach, California, ending up in Coral Gables in Florida. I want to go to the Great Wall of China in November to see the first snowfall. It's amazing. I've done it, and I'll tell you, it's a spectacular view. I want to go and see this, visit this old crazy uncle of mine who lives in a prefabricated shack on top of Mount Everest. I want to do all those kind of things, right? That is life enrichment. That are the kind of things I want to do now in life. I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to take too much volatility of returns. I know what I have in my balance sheet. I know what my incomes and outgoings are. My asset allocation will look like this. 80% capital preservation, liquidity, stable incomes. No, sir, I'm not taking any risks. I have only 15, 20% in wealth enhancement. That is, I'll be investing in some of those areas where I take low to moderate level of risk, not really high risks, right? My Islamic portfolio would look something like that. I have my property, 80% of that is going to be in my property, my SIP, my ISA, my Islamic cash equivalents of murabas, money market funds, cash, cash fund, emergency cash fund. I take a bit of risk. I invest in sukuk funds, balanced sukuk and halal equities funds. I do that. And if I am a little bit more adventurous, I'll maybe put a little money in halal multi-asset funds or something like that, just about 5%. So you see that 80% is in capital preservation. I'm not taking risks. 15% is in a small, medium, low to medium level risk instruments like sukuk funds, and maybe 5% in gold, in halal gold or halal multi-asset funds, right? Now, this is my Islamic investment portfolio. My conventional investment portfolio obviously would look something like this, where I will have fixed term savings account and short term money market funds. And then I would be investing, at the wealth enhancement level, I'll be investing in government and high grade corporate bonds or large cap stocks or dividend paying stocks, REITs, and so on and so forth, those kind of things. Right? So that is, I'm a low risk taker, right? Now, you notice that I'm a low risk taker because I'm at that point of my life where I've met my obligations. I'm looking to a nice retirement, right? When I was a medium risk taker, I was in the middle. I was 40 years old or 45 years old. I had my family, my wife, my children, maybe perhaps my parents along with me as well. I had obligations to meet before I retire. My risk profile was different, right? I was a medium risk taker. Now, I want to shift and give you the example of a high risk taker. So a high risk taker is someone like this, whose focus now is on capital growth. It's a long-term focus on capital growth, not a short-term focus. And I can now handle high volatility in my returns. I can take more risk. Right? Let me give you an example. So I'm a 25-year-old guy. I've just graduated. I'm on the corporate ladder. I'm living with my parents. I have no responsibilities, not married, and the world is my oyster. I have 35 to 40 years of working life left in me, right? So I start out, I have my balance sheet, which is not great. I have my income statement. Yes, I have my income coming in. My cash flow is positive because I'm living with my parents and mom cooks great dinners. So I stay at home, right? But then in a couple of years' time, I get married and my responsibilities start. And then I have children. And then I need to buy my own property, right? And then I need to meet all of those obligations that the 40-year-old, the medium risk taker took. But at this point, I can take higher risks. And my portfolio would look something like this. You see, capital preservation is very small at the end, 10 to 20%. Wealth enhancement, that is taking some risk, more low to moderate risk, is about 30, 35%. But 50% of my assets are going to go into wealth generation. That is a higher level of risk. Because I'm looking at high returns, I can take more high risk because I'm still young. I have 30 to 40 years of working life left in me. I can always come back. My aircraft can hit. I can handle stronger headwinds. I can handle stronger crosswinds right now because I'm young, right? And I can always come back, bring my aircraft back on course when it goes off course. So that is where I am because I am still young. I'm 25 years old. I have no obligations at this time. I have less visibility in terms of my obligations later on, right? But I can handle that. Now, my portfolio would look something like this, right? Capital preservation is very short term. This is my Islamic portfolio. Cash equivalents, muraba, mudarba, I still don't have any property. My wealth enhancement, which is going to be about 35%, I do it in two stages. The first stage is halal ETFs, equity funds, stuff like that. lower level, but lower risk, right? And then maybe I go into slightly higher risk like emerging markets or sector specific in equities like technology, even energy, or luxury goods, media, and so on and so forth, which provides you with very stable returns. And the prices don't move up and down heavily as well. I mean, tremendously. They don't. So they're fairly stable in that sense. I put about 35% in. But 45 to 50%, I put in the high risk levels. And then I go in stages. That's wealth generation. So it's this stage over here that I start investing in. And then successively, I'm investing in more and more riskier assets in order to get more and more return. Then I start to put into halal ETFs for growth stocks, technology, AI, data centers, internet, all those kind of things, where the volatility of price movements in terms of these assets is much higher, but then the potential return is much higher as well. Then I go into global halal, global multi-asset funds, commodities. Then eventually in the top, the apex, I go into venture capital, direct investments, private equity investments. These are much riskier investments, but the potential return is higher as well. So given my position as a 25-year-old, you can see that I am in a position to start taking more risk with the idea, with the aim of getting a higher return. And the sooner I try to do, the better I am. But of course, it will take me time to get there. So this is my Islamic investments portfolio. This is my conventional investments portfolio, which is very similar, but obviously it doesn't care about the halal stocks and all of that stuff, right? Now, having said that, I will compare all three of these here. So I have three pyramids. I have a low risk taker, the medium risk taker, and the high risk taker. And you can see clearly that when I'm the low risk taker, my capital preservation and liquidity is almost 80%, which is completely opposite to the high risk taker, whose wealth enhancement and wealth generation are about 80%, and capital preservation is only 10 to 20%. And then, of course, a medium risk taker is the middle. These two clouds, gray clouds there, basically suggest to you there are lots of shades of gray in there. Why? Because every individual family has their own issues, has their own challenges, have their own obligations, have their own resources, have their own assets and liability structures, and they fall in between somewhere here and there, which was just an example. So I will recap this all in a minute. And boy, if I look at this, oh my goodness, I have more, Mudabbir Sahab, I think I have more pyramids here than the pharaohs built in Egypt, or the Mayan Indians built in Mexico, or the Incas built in Peru. There are more pyramids in this presentation that I have. So I will recap this. And so recapping would be essentially basically suggests to me that first of all, make a balance sheet and a cash flow statement as of today. Know where you stand as of today, right? Establish a timeline of visual future events in your life, your goals and objectives, your obligations. When do you need how much money? When will you need that, right? Establish what possible risks you can take. How much of risk of shortfall can you take? How much volatility of returns can you take on your assets? Liquidity risk, as I remember I told you about, that you can have a wonderful asset, but you don't have the liquidity, meaning you can't sell it today to pay off your obligations, right? Sit down with an experienced professional certified planner. And we have few of them in our Jamaat. Actually, we have two very good ones, Taimur Saab in Edinburgh and Khalid Bat Saab here in London, who are professional certified financial planners. There are others as well. Sit down with them. Take your timeline and your balance sheet and your income statement to them, so that they have information on the basis of which they can help you out. This is like saying that you're going to a doctor. Unless you tell the doctor exactly what the ailment is, what is paining you, where is paining you, the doctor is not going to be able to give you the proper medication. The certified financial planner is a financial doctor. So you have to show them what you have. You have to show them where you want to go. What is your flight path that you're looking at? They can help you then embark on that flight path of financial freedom. They can do that. So they will help you set up an investment program. You monitor your portfolio, and this is very important. Monitor your portfolio every 6 months to see whether you're on course or not. If you're not on course, see your financial planner, try to put your financial aircraft back on course. Meet your financial planner on an annual basis to tweak your portfolio to where you want to get, right? Couple pieces of advice now that I would say from my 35 to 40 years of experience. Investment is a discipline and it's critical. You have to have a discipline, just like you have a discipline of going to the gym and exercising every week or every 3 days or every 2 days. Investment is a discipline. Do not try to be smart. Do not try to time the market. Don't try to engage as a day trader or a weekly trader. You're up against big institutions and you can lose money. Market timing is like trying to catch a falling knife. It's dangerous. It's difficult. Being in the right assets is very important. We call this asset allocation. And time studies have showed that asset allocation accounts for 70% of portfolio returns. So if you're in the right assets, your financial aircraft would have a good tailwind. If you're not in the right assets, then your headwinds will take over your aircraft and you could be thrown out of course. Okay? Control your expenses, carry a positive cash flow. Now, remember when we talked about the cash flow statement, I told you that there's 3 groups of expenses. One that's pretty much fixed, but you have more flexibility in the second and third. That's what I was hinting at. And that's what I'm saying here now. That those 2 groups of expenses that you can control, try to reduce those expenses to make sure that your cash flow is positive, that your earnings, your incomings of money is greater than your outgoings, so that you have a certain amount of saving. Take that saving and start investing regularly in short amounts. Okay? Don't sit there and wait and say, I'm going to wait till I have 20,000 pounds and then I'll start to invest. That time will never come. It will never come. So start investing now. Have that discipline to invest even small amounts on a regular basis. If your net worth is negative, convert it into positive by these investments. What you own should always be greater than what you owe. And then monitor your portfolio on a regular basis. Make sure that you are on course. Make sure that you are on course to meet your obligations that are coming forth. And this is the way to financial freedom. Last but not least, I'll lead you with 2 sets of investment rules. The first one is never lose money. And the second, and point 2 on that is do not forget the first rule. The second rule is not making money is offensive, but losing money is criminal. So what that says is be prudent, be foresighted, be ready to invest in a way that you meet your obligations on time. When your aircraft lands at the next airport, you have enough money to meet those obligations. You don't have less. You have enough or more than that is possible. I'll stop there. Jazakallah for listening to me. I hope I have made some sense. And if I haven't, forgive me for that. And I'm open to questions and answers that you may have. We have, I think, about 12 minutes left. Mubadir Saab.
Yes, that's correct. We have about 12 minutes. Jazakallah seems like a very, very eye-opening talk highlighting our risk appetites, how we identify our risk appetites, what people at different stages in their life should be looking at in terms of objectives and how we should be basically planning our future. So, Jazakallah, we do have a couple questions in the chat, and some of them are more pertinent to the talk. So, I would mention the one of these questions that Hazur is highlighting a potential of events happening in the future, and due to that, our outlook on life can change. So our investment priorities would also change as well as the timeline of events and our investing opportunities. Hazur Eidullah bin Nasser al-Aziz, in his recent meeting with Tanzanian brothers in This Week with Hazur, in no uncertain terms, informed us that the World War III will peak in 2028, 2029. He also suggested that Africans may lead the world. How should we take this advice in terms of our investments and future planning? Sorry, just before you answer that question, Wasim Saab, I am opening the poll. So if everyone can please answer the poll as well, which will help us in future talks. So yeah, Wasim Saab, Hazur is advising us on certain parts of the world that may lead the world in the future. So how should that or will that affect our planning?
So, um, I mean, this is the word comes from Khalifa Waqt, and obviously we take that 100% as it comes. And that is something that we need to basically then include in our plans, include in that timeline, in a way that we have enough in terms of food, in terms of shelter, or in terms of whatever money that we need to have to meet those eventualities if that war happens, if those unpleasant geopolitical events take place. And we need to be prudent enough to do that. And I know that Zur has also mentioned that we should have food, you know, for 6 months, ration for 6 months, and other things that we need to have that. Yes, indeed, those are the kind of things we need to include in our timeline and always have them. Uh, you know, as we move along the timeline, of course, I have only talked about the asset allocation side of things, but then we have other expenses, incidentals, for example, emergency funding for this and that. And this may fall in that emergency funding bucket, if you will, so that we need to include that in our timeline. There's no question about that.
Jazakallah. I think in one of the talks that was around a month ago, it was also mentioned that we should have about 3 to 6 months worth of savings. And would you then suggest that those savings would not count as part of our investment? We should keep that to the side for emergencies, and then whatever's left, that should
So
be used.
yeah, we would put them in our portfolio. We would keep those savings in
Okay.
portfolio because if you see the bottom rung of that pyramid
Capital and
suggests
preservation.
capital preservation.
Yeah.
So that's where we need to have those funds, short-term funds, in short-term investments, which we can readily convert into cash, right?
Yeah.
So we need to have that amount of cash. Each individual and the family needs to figure out how much you need. So let's take our expenses for the next 6 months as we stand today.
Hmm.
And let's say that if our expenses are £2,000 a month, that would mean that we need to have at least anywhere between 12 to 15,000 set aside for that eventuality, if that does happen, for that kind of
Yeah.
situation. So yes, indeed. So this timeline that I've suggested is just a framework. And within this framework, we have to include things like what you just indicated, what Azul mentioned. And we also have to include other things which we have, that we'll have to include in these. And that is proprietary to every individual and the family that are there. In certain family, I mean, time, for a couple, they have their parents with them. Of course,
Hmm.
they have to take care of their parents, be it medical help or anything else, or nursing help and stuff like that. So you need to budget for that as well.
Hmm.
So all of these kind of things as are family sp specific, individual specific, that they need to have those buckets in there. within that timeline, within that asset allocation.
Yes, definitely. As you mentioned, this is, it's just it's a template of some sort, and every family, every individual will have their own timeline. So you mentioned in one of your pyramids that high risk can, if someone is 25 or younger and they have a job and they don't have many they don't have excess they don't have expenses as other people would, but some people may get married earlier, may have children earlier, may have for whatever reason a necessity to move out and acquire a property. So everyone is different in that sense as well. What I want to ask is, desperate times do call sometimes for desperate measures, or some people do feel that they may be low risk takers, and then all of a sudden, a situation may occur where they feel that they need to take higher risks. And that might come from an emotional perspective. How do you change that mindset, or what do you do in that situation where you feel that now I'm desperate, I have to take a high risk? Is that sensible? Is that sensible choice to make to jump into a high risk vehicle, investment vehicle, or should they find other avenues to get them out of a tricky situation?
Sure. So that's where you need to sit down with your certified financial planner. That's where they come in, and they can help you based upon your level of risk. If you need to take additional risk, how much additional risk can you take? How much can you afford to take? Because when you take risk, the risk means basically is the risk of losing money. So how much can you afford that? And that again will depend upon your individual circumstances, right? How
Yeah.
much you have, how much can you risk you can take to top up your returns. So that so that is something again that's individual specific, but you need to have professional help for that. You need to have someone who is a financial planner who can sit down with you, tweak your portfolio to put it back onto course so that you can get to where you want to financially.
Sure. Just a quick one. How do people find financial planners? Because this may be a term that people are hearing for the first time. Where do people go to find financial planners, and how easy, or what should they be looking for? Because obviously there'll be different financial planners that will be offering different things. Who do they pick? How do they pick them?
So in order to find, I mean, you can always find, you can always look up and see financial planners around. They're independent financial planners. They're financial planners that are part of companies. If you're a wealthy person, you can visit the wealth management department of a local bank. Lloyd's will do it for you. NatWest will do it for you. Foreign banks will do it for you, depending on what kind of net worth you have. If you have £500,000 or even £300,000. Some of the institutions will come, they'll have dedicated portfolio managers who can help you based upon your goals, because you need to have your goals set and you need to have where you stand today. These are two most important things, and that's where they can help you out. Now, certified financial planners, as I mentioned, we have some in our Jamaat as well. We have Khalid Batsab, who is on our panel. We have Tamoor Saab, who's on our panel, who's based in Edinburgh. These are certified financial planners, and I'm sure that they will be willing to help. Of course, you'll have to pay a fee for that. We all have to put bread on the table. But yes, yeah, I'm sure that they will be able to help, and they can share their phone numbers with you, Mudabbir Saab, that you can share with the members of the
Sure.
Jamaat.
Jazakallah. There's a few questions that I'll group together. So, uh, what platforms can people use to start investing really small, and what is the smallest amount that people should be starting with? Again, that I
So,
imagine that will be dependent on their risk appetite, but
yeah,
generally, what
yeah,
platforms are there any platforms, and what's the
yeah.
smallest amount?
So, there's no small amount to start investing. Even £100 a month is good enough if you start to invest. But you need to have the discipline to invest on a monthly basis. You can put it if you want to go the Islamic way, you can put in a money market, Islamic money market account, and you let it grow. And you keep adding to it, every month, every month, every month. Be it £100 or £200, £300, start investing. Have the discipline. Do it on a regular basis. Even their small amounts, regular basis. And the discipline is very important. Right? Until you get to a point where you sit down with your advisor, with your financial planner, And you can then, by that time, you have amassed some amount of assets. You can then have those assets allocated according to your goals and according to the level of risk you can take.
Jazakallah, thank you so much. Just one of two last questions. Could you please explain what the halal ETFs and the other halal investment markets are, though, which were mentioned in one of the investment portfolio slides?
Sure. So I dealt with this in more detail in my first
Yeah.
first presentation, and I think that they are available for people to
On
look
YouTube,
at.
yes. Yeah, they
But
are on YouTube.
on a very basic level, these portfolios are these ETFs are basically exchange traded funds. You have the equivalent of those in that they are for the United States. They are issued in the U.S. and traded in the U.S. But you have similar to those in Europe, which are called the UCITS, and they are available. Halal ETFs, halal usage basically mean that these funds would be investing in companies that are involved in halal businesses and that meet certain criteria for them to be considered halal. And these criteria are set by the Accounting and Auditing Organization of Financial Institutions, which is a ruling body for the Islamic banks, for Islamic financial institutions, which I've mentioned in my previous talk quite a bit. But halal investments essentially mean that they can invest in everything except for certain areas, which include pornography, interest-bearing assets, interest-bearing instruments, pork production and distribution, and weapons production and distribution. A lot of people are surprised when I say about weapons, but why are weapons not considered halal? They're considered haram. The reason why, because why are weapons produced? Weapons are being produced to, some people will say for a defense, some will say for offense, regardless whether defense or offensive. At the end of the day, the ultimate aim is to kill people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like that. And therefore, anything that's involved in taking the life of people, innocent people, that's not halal. That's haram.
Jazakallah Wasim Saab, thank you so much. We will end this here. I know there are a couple more questions that where we were unable to answer. If you could please message them or forward them to the Sanato Tijarat team, your local Sanato Tijarat team, that we will inshallah try and answer that. For anyone asking about previous talks, they are uploaded onto the Sanato Tijarat YouTube channel, as inshallah this one will be as well. So please do look out for them. And inshallah, our next talk will be next week. I can't remember exactly what pillar it comes under, but please do join us again next week at 7 p.m. on Monday. Jazakallah for everyone that has tuned in. Jazakallah for your feedback as well. And also Jazakallah Wasim Saab for your enlightening and very informative talk. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah. Jazakallah.